not bodies. Data. The archives of the galactic sovereignty stretched across 17 moon stations, and Verath knew every corridor, every terminal, every gap where information should exist, but did not. He was old now. His carapace had dulled to the color of forgotten metal. His eyes, all 6 of them, ached in the artificial light. But he kept working. Archivists did not retire. They simply became part of the collection. Today was different. Today the Sovereignty Council had summoned him to the Grand Chamber for a diplomatic briefing. A new species was joining the galactic community. The Telosi, insectoid, curious, young, too young to know what questions they should not ask. Verath settled into his observation alcove and watched the proceedings. The council head, a massive creature named Soroth Prime, floated at the center of the chamber. His voice filled the room like gas filling a container. "We welcome the Telosi Collective into the Sovereignty," Soroth Prime announced. "You will find our union to be one of mutual protection and shared knowledge." The Telosi ambassador was small. Her wings folded tight against her back. Her compound eyes reflected the chamber lights like broken mirrors. "We are honored," she said. Her voice was high and precise. "We have studied your star maps. We have one question before we proceed." Soroth Prime's massive body shifted. A ripple of discomfort passed through the council members. "Ask," Soroth Prime said. The Telosi ambassador activated a holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared, rotating slowly. Most of it glowed with the soft blue of sovereignty territory. Some sections pulsed red, harvester zones, places where the great devourers roamed and fed. But one section was gray, empty, unmarked. "This corridor," the ambassador said, "designation 77 null. It contains several habitable systems. Our astronomers have detected radio signals from at least one planet. Yet there is no sovereignty presence, no trade routes, no diplomatic contact." She paused. "And no harvester activity. In 12,000 cycles, not one harvester ship has entered this region." The silence in the chamber was thick enough to chew. "Why?" the ambassador asked. Verath watched Soroth Prime's body chemistry change. The massive creature's skin shifted through 3 colors in rapid sequence. Fear, anger, and something else. Something Verath had never seen in his 4 centuries of service. Shame. "The corridor is resource poor," Soroth Prime said. "Logistically inefficient. The harvesters are practical entities. They do not waste effort on barren systems." "Our astronomers disagree," the ambassador pressed. "The 3rd planet in the main system shows extensive biological activity, possibly intelligent life. The radio signals suggest the matter is closed." Soroth Prime's voice hit like a physical force. Several council members flinched. The Telosi ambassador's wings twitched, but she did not back down. "We are joining your sovereignty," she said. "We are trusting you with our future. We deserve to know what lives in that corridor that frightens the things that frighten you." Nobody moved. Verath felt something crack open in his chest. 400 cycles of careful ignorance. 400 cycles of organizing data and never asking why some files were missing. He had always known. Some part of him had always known. The hole in the archives was not an accident. "The briefing is concluded," Soroth Prime announced. "Ambassador, your people will receive the standard integration package. The matter of Corridor 77 null is not relevant to your membership." The Telosi ambassador stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then she bowed, her wings rustling with a sound like dry leaves. "Of course," she said. "We thank the Council for its transparency." She left. The Council dispersed. Verath remained in his alcove, his 6 eyes fixed on the holographic map that still floated in the center of the chamber. The gray zone, the empty corridor, 12,000 cycles of nothing. No, not nothing. Something so terrible that the harvesters, creatures who had devoured 10,000 civilizations, who fed on fear and despair like wine, refused to enter. Verith was dying. He had known for 30 cycles now. His species did not age gracefully. They simply stopped. One day his hearts would forget to beat, and that would be the end of Verith kind, senior archivist, keeper of forgotten things. But not yet. He had one task left. HR. The restricted archive was buried beneath the main station. Verith had the access codes. He had always had them. He had simply never used them. The elevator descended for 6 minutes. The doors opened onto a corridor lit by dying emergency lights. Dust covered everything. Nobody had been here in a very long time. Verith walked. His legs ached. His carapace creaked. But he walked. The terminal he sought was at the end of the corridor. It was old. Older than the sovereignty itself. The screen flickered when he touched it. He entered his credentials. A menu appeared. Files stretched back millions of cycles. The history of the galaxy, organized and indexed and carefully maintained. Except for one entry. File designation, SOL3 contact event, status incomplete, do not reconstruct, date 12,000 cycles ago, classification level, redacted. Verith stared at the screen. His claws hovered over the input pad. Do not reconstruct. Not classified. Not forbidden. Something worse. Incomplete. Someone had torn this file apart and scattered the pieces. Someone had worked very hard to make sure it could never be reassembled. Verith thought about the Talosi ambassador, her compound eyes, her wings pressed tight against her back, her question that nobody would answer. What lives there that frightens the things that frighten you? He began to type. The pieces were scattered across 17 databases. Metadata ghosts, cross-reference fragments, sensor logs filed under wrong dates, interview transcripts attributed to people who never existed. Someone had hidden this truth very carefully. But they had hidden it from species who accepted answers, species who stopped asking when told to stop. Verith was not that species, not anymore. He was dying, and dying creatures had nothing left to fear. The first fragment loaded. It was a single line of text, recovered from a corrupted diplomatic cable. Harvester Swarm 77, engaged Sol 3, expected duration, 40 cycles, actual duration, 1 cycle, status, retreat, cause, data expunged. Verith read it 3 times. 1 cycle. Every other harvest in recorded history had taken 40 cycles minimum. Some lasted hundreds. The harvesters were patient. They broke civilization slowly, feeding on the fear and despair as societies crumbled. But Sol 3 had lasted 1 cycle, and the harvesters had retreated. Verith's claws trembled against the input pad. His species could survive without rest for 20 days before organ failure began. He had 8 days left, maybe less. His hearts had already started their irregular rhythm, the slow drumbeat of approaching death. He did not care. The fragments were coming together. Piece by piece, file by file, he was rebuilding something that had been deliberately destroyed. Each recovered document led to 3 more. Each answered question created 10 new ones. He worked in the restricted archive. Nobody disturbed him. Nobody even knew he was there. The advantage of being old and forgotten was that people stopped watching you. On the 3rd day, he found the first harvester file. It was a biological survey written by a sovereignty scientist who had been dead for 11,000 cycles. The language was clinical, cold, but what it described made Verith's carapace itch. The harvesters were not simply predators. They were parasites, psychic parasites. They did not eat flesh. They did not consume resources. They fed on emotion. Fear was their appetizer. The initial terror when their ships appeared in orbit. The panic as communications failed. The horror as weapons proved useless. Despair was the main course. The slow collapse of hope. Governments falling. Families breaking apart. The gradual acceptance that extinction was coming and nothing could stop it. And acceptance, that was the dessert, the final surrender, the moment when an entire species simply gave up, stopped fighting, stopped running, stopped caring. That was when the harvesters fed. The process took time. You could not rush despair, you had to let it ripen. 40 cycles was average. Some species held out longer. The record was 312 cycles, set by a species called the Vorn. The Vorn had been stubborn. The harvesters had been patient. In the end, the Vorn had knelt, like everyone else. Verath made notes. His claws were shaking now, a constant tremor that made typing difficult. He ignored it. On the 7th day, he found the Sol 3 contact file. It was fragmented, corrupted. Someone had burned through the data storage with electromagnetic pulses, destroying everything they could reach. But they had missed one backup. A single copy, stored on a physical medium that had been misfiled in a maintenance closet 11,000 cycles ago. Verath read it. Sol 3 was a small planet, blue and green and white, oxygen atmosphere, carbon-based life, intelligent species, 1. Technological level at time of contact, primitive. They had just learned to work metal. They had no aircraft, no space travel, no energy weapons. By every measure, they should have been easy prey. Harvester Swarm 77 had arrived with 17 ships, standard complement. The Swarm Queen had broadcast the standard psychic terror pulse, the kind that had broken 10,000 civilizations before. Expected response? Social collapse within 3 days, mass panic, religious hysteria, surrender within 10 cycles. Actual response: data corrupted. Verath slammed his claw against the terminal. No, he muttered. No, no, no. He kept searching. On the 9th day, he found the observation post. It was listed in the maintenance logs as decommissioned, located on a dead moon at the edge of Corridor 77 null. Powered down, abandoned, but not destroyed. Verath looked at his trembling claws, his failing hearts, his 6 eyes that could barely focus anymore. He had maybe 6 days left. The observation post was 4 days away by shuttle. He went anyway. The post was exactly where the logs said it would be. A small station, half buried in lunar dust. The power cells were dead. The life support was offline. Verath had to wear an environment suit that was older than most civilizations. But the data cores were intact. He connected his portable terminal and began the download. Most of the files were corrupted. Sensor logs showing nothing but static. Communication records that dissolved into noise. But one file remained. It was not a visual recording. The cameras had failed during the Sol 3 event. It was not an audio recording either. The sound files had been deliberately erased. It was something else. Emotional resonance data. Harvester technology. The Sovereignty had captured it during a border skirmish centuries ago. The harvesters used it to measure the psychic state of their prey, fear levels, despair indexes, the precise moment when a species was ripe for harvest. This file contained the emotional resonance data from Sol 3. 12,000 cycles old. Still intact. Verath's claws hovered over the activation key. His hearts beat their broken rhythm. His body was failing. He could feel it. The slow shutdown of systems that had run for 400 cycles. He pressed the key. The data did not play through speakers, it played through his nervous system. Emotional resonance technology worked directly on the brain. You did not hear the feelings, you felt them. The first wave hit him like a hammer. Fear. Raw animal terror. The kind that made you want to run and hide and never come out. The harvester broadcast had worked. The humans had felt it. Every single one of them had experienced absolute, overwhelming fear. But that was not what made Verath's carapace crack. The second wave came. Not despair, not surrender. Something else. It took Verath a moment to identify it. His species had a word for this feeling, but they never used it. It was considered primitive. The emotion of beasts. Rage. The humans had felt the fear, and then they had gotten angry. Not frustrated, not upset. This was something deeper, something hotter. A fury that burned through the terror like fire through dry grass. The fear was still there, but it was fuel now, kindling. The third wave hit. Vareth gasped. It was not any emotion he had felt before. His species did not have a word for it, but he understood it instantly, the way you understand a knife at your throat. Spite. The humans were going to die. They knew this. Their primitive weapons could not hurt the harvesters. Their stone walls could not stop the psychic assault. Every logical calculation said they should surrender. They refused. Not because they thought they could win, because they wanted to hurt the things that were hurting them. Because dying on your feet was better than living on your knees. Because if extinction was coming, they would make it expensive. The emotional resonance data screamed through Vareth's nervous system. He felt what the harvesters had felt when they tried to feed on human despair. It burned. It was like drinking acid, like swallowing fire. The human psychic signature was not food. It was poison. The spite, the rage, the vicious joy of fighting even when fighting was hopeless. These emotions were caustic to harvester biology. The Swarm Queen had tried to dominate a human mind directly. The last fragment of data showed what happened. The human had not broken. The human had grinned. And the Swarm Queen, for the first time in 4 billion years of existence, had felt something she had only ever inflicted on others. Fear of being eaten. The file ended. Vareth sat in the dark observation post, his environment suit running low on oxygen, his heart stuttering, his body dying. He understood now. The harvesters had not conquered Sol 3. Sol 3 had bitten back. He began typing his report. His claws were steady now. The trembling had stopped. He had found what he was looking for. They did not break, he whispered to the empty station. They bit back. He had 4 days to live. He intended to use them. Kira was 16 years old. She lived in a village by the river. The same village where her mother had lived, and her mother's mother before that. She knew how to plant grain. She knew how to make pottery. She knew the names of all the gods and the songs that pleased them. She did not know what the shapes in the sky were. Nobody did. The elders called a meeting. They burned offerings. They chanted prayers. The shapes did not leave. They hung in the red sky like wounds, black and angular and wrong. Then the feeling came. It started as a whisper in the back of Kira's skull. Something cold, something that slithered. The whisper said, "You are nothing. You are small. You will end." Kira watched her mother fall to her knees, weeping. She watched her father stare at the sky with empty eyes. She watched the village elder begin to claw at his own face, screaming words that were not words. The feeling grew stronger. It pressed against her mind, like a hand pressing against her throat. It wanted her to stop, to give up, to accept. Kira felt the fear. She tasted it, copper and bile at the back of her mouth. And then something else rose up inside her. No, it was not a thought. It was deeper than thought. It came from the same place as hunger, as thirst, as the need to breathe. A rejection so fundamental, it bypassed her brain entirely. No, you do not get to decide when I stop. She grabbed her father's spear. The Harvester Swarm Queen observed the planet through 17 different sensor arrays. The data was confusing. Expected response to psychic broadcast. Social collapse. Mass panic. Surrender within 10 cycles. Actual response, the creatures were organizing. This was unusual. Some species resisted initially, but resistance always followed the same pattern. Desperate, fearful, increasingly hopeless. The prey fought because they could not accept the inevitable. They fought until acceptance came. These creatures were different. The queen watched as small groups of the creatures gathered. They did not gather to hide. They did not gather to prey. They gathered to plan. They were building traps. Their weapons could not harm harvester ships. Their stone tools could not pierce harvester armor. Every logical calculation said their efforts were useless. They knew this. They did not care. The queen increased the psychic broadcast. More fear, more despair, more pressure. The creatures felt it. The sensors showed their terror levels spiking. Their bodies flooded with stress chemicals. Their hearts raced, their hands shook. And then something impossible happened. They used it. The fear became fuel. The terror became energy. The creatures did not collapse under the psychic weight. They converted it into motion. They ran faster. They worked harder. They organized more efficiently. The queen had never seen this before. She adjusted her approach. Instead of breaking them slowly, she would demonstrate overwhelming force. She sent a harvesting pod to the largest settlement. The pod descended through the atmosphere. It landed in the center of the creature's primitive city. The hatch opened. A harvester drone emerged. It was beautiful, in the way that predators are beautiful. 12 limbs, sensors that could detect fear at molecular levels, armor that could withstand any weapon these creatures possessed. The creatures attacked it anyway. They came with spears and rocks and farming tools. They came knowing they would die. The drone killed 17 of them in the first 30 seconds. Their weapons bounced off its armor. Their bodies broke against its limbs. They kept coming. The drone fed on their fear. It drank their despair. This was the natural order. Prey died. Predators fed. The cycle continued. But something was wrong. The emotional signature was corrupted. Mixed in with the fear was something else. Something hot and sharp and wrong. The drone tried to process it. Spite. The creatures were not fighting to win. They were fighting to cost. Every wound they failed to inflict was still an attempt. Every death was a statement. You will not have us for free. The drone felt something it had no name for, a burning sensation in its feeding organs. The spite was not nourishing. It was poison. It retreated to the pod. The queen called a war council. 17 harvester ships, 300 drones, 4 billion years of experience consuming civilizations. And they were losing. Not militarily. The creatures could not hurt them. Their weapons were toys. Their defenses were jokes. But the harvesters could not feed. Every attempt to harvest emotional energy ended the same way. The fear was there. The despair was there. But underneath it, poisoning everything, was that same burning spite, that same vicious refusal, that same suicidal joy in making the predators work for every bite. The queen tried a different approach. She selected one creature, a young female, strong psychic signature. The queen would dominate her mind directly, break her completely, use her as an example to shatter the others. The queen reached out with her consciousness. She found the creature's mind, small, primitive, fragile. She pushed. The creature's name was Kira. She was 16 years old. She was holding her father's spear. She had watched half her village die. She felt the queen enter her mind. She felt the alien presence trying to crush her will, trying to make her kneel, trying to make her accept. Kira thought about her mother, her father, all the people the sky wounds had broken. She thought about how much she hated them. Not feared, hated. The queen pushed harder. Surrender, accept, stop. Kira smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had found something worth dying for, something worth hurting for. You want inside my head, she thought. Fine, let me show you what's in here. She did not push back. She pulled. She grabbed the queen's consciousness and dragged it deeper into her mind. Past the fear, past the pain, into the place where the spite lived, the dark, hot core of human defiance. The place that said, "I would rather burn than bow." The queen screamed. It was the first time in 4 billion years that a harvester had screamed. She ripped herself free from the creature's mind. She fled back to her ship. She broadcast a single message to every harvester in the swarm. Retreat, retreat, retreat. The 17 ships rose from Earth's orbit. They fled into deep space. They did not stop until they reached the edge of harvester territory. The Queen composed her final report on Sol 3. Status: unharvestable. Threat level: extreme. Recommendation: permanent exclusion. Reason: species contains no prey, only predators. Do not engage, do not contact, do not return. She added a personal note, something she had never done before. They enjoy it, the fighting, the dying, the hurting. They call it something. I found the word in the creature's mind. Glory. They think there is glory in struggle. They are insane. Avoid them. The report was filed. The corridor was marked. The harvesters never returned. And on a small blue planet, a 16-year-old girl lowered her father's spear and watched the sky wounds disappear. She did not know what she had done. She only knew that she had refused to kneel. That was enough. Verath returned from the observation post with 2 days left to live. His shuttle docked at the main archive station. His legs barely worked. His vision flickered between his 6 eyes like a broken display. But his mind was clear, clearer than it had been in a century. He knew the truth now. The harvesters were not invincible. They had never been invincible. They were farmers. And farmers did not fight their livestock. They cultivated it. Every species in the galactic sovereignty had been cultivated. The first contact protocols, the diplomatic training, the cultural conditioning that ran so deep, nobody questioned it anymore. Demonstrate compliance. Demonstrate value. Do not provoke. These were not survival strategies. They were feeding instructions. The sovereignty existed because the harvesters allowed it to exist. The member species survived because they had learned to kneel properly, to fear properly, to despair on schedule and surrender when told. Humans had refused, and the harvesters had fled. Verath understood now why the Sol 3 file had been destroyed. It was not to hide the humans, it was to hide what the humans proved. Resistance was possible. The harvesters could be beaten, not with weapons, not with technology, with something simpler, something every species possessed but had been trained to suppress. The will to fight, even when fighting was hopeless. The sovereignty could not allow its members to know this. If they learned that surrender was a choice rather than a necessity, they might choose differently. They might bite back. And then the carefully managed relationship between predator and prey would collapse. Verath accessed the diplomatic archives. He was looking for something specific, a file he had seen referenced in the Sol 3 fragments. A sovereignty document, not a harvester one. He found it. Title: Theoretical Human Integration Scenarios. Classification: Maximum Restriction. Date: 847 cycles ago. The sovereignty had studied the humans, from a distance, using long-range sensors and intercepted radio signals. They had built psychological profiles, behavioral models, threat assessments. Verath read the summary. Species designation: Homo sapiens, self-named humans. Homeworld: Sol 3, self-named Earth. Technological level: advanced industrial, early space exploration. Population: approximately 8 billion. Threat assessment: catastrophic. He read further. Psychological profile: humans display unprecedented levels of competitive aggression. Unlike other spacefaring species, they achieve technological advancement through continuous internal conflict. They have fought each other for resources, territory, ideology, and entertainment. Their history is a catalog of violence, interrupted by brief periods of recovery before more violence. This should have destroyed them. It did not. Humans appear to thrive under conditions of conflict. Their stress response includes a secondary cascade that converts fear into motivation. They describe this as adrenaline and actively seek situations that trigger it. They have a saying, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger." They believe this. They have built their civilization on it. Integration assessment. Do not integrate. Humans cannot be incorporated into the sovereignty framework. They will not accept subordinate status. They will not follow compliance protocols. When faced with threats, they do not calculate odds of survival. They calculate odds of inflicting damage. If humans learn that the sovereignty has been practicing coordinated surrender to the harvesters, they will not understand. Their psychological makeup does not include a framework for strategic capitulation. They will interpret our survival strategy as cowardice. They will try to help. Projected response to harvester threat. If humans become aware of harvester activity in other sectors, probability of aggressive intervention, 97%. They will not attack the harvesters to save themselves. They will attack the harvesters to save us. This must not be allowed to happen. Verath's claws trembled against the display. They will try to help. The sovereignty was not afraid of humans conquering them. They were afraid of humans liberating them. He scrolled down. There was more. Secondary concern. Human cultural transmission is aggressive. Their ideas spread. Their music spreads. Their stories spread. If humans make contact with sovereignty species, they will share their history. They will tell stories of resistance, of fighting against impossible odds, of choosing death over submission. These stories are dangerous. 300 cycles ago, a sovereignty research vessel intercepted a human entertainment broadcast. A story about a small group of humans fighting a larger force. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned. They could not win. They fought anyway. The story ended with all of them dead. The broadcast treated this as heroic. The research crew was quarantined. 6 members had to be psychologically reconstructed. They had been inspired. Conclusion. Maintain exclusion zone around Sol system. Do not contact humans. Do not allow humans to contact sovereignty species. Do not allow sovereignty species to learn about human psychology. If humans discover the truth about the harvesters and the sovereignty, they will come. And if they come, everything changes. There was a handwritten note at the bottom, added by someone whose name had been redacted. They will not come to save themselves. They will come to save us. We do not deserve it. This is what makes them uncontrollable. Verath closed the file. He sat in the dark archive for a long time. His species had a word for what he was feeling. They did not use it often. It was considered a weakness, an emotion that led to poor decisions and irrational behavior. The word was hope. He had maybe 30 hours left. His hearts were failing. His vision was almost gone. But his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. The archive system was connected to every public database in the sovereignty, news networks, educational repositories, communication hubs. If someone wanted to share information with every citizen of every member species simultaneously, the archive system was the way to do it. Verath had spent 400 cycles learning this system. He knew its secrets. He knew its weaknesses. He knew how to make sure a message could not be deleted. His claws moved across the input pad. He compiled everything. The Sol 3 files, the harvester biology data, the emotional resonance recording, the sovereignty's psychological assessments, everything. He attached a note. This is the truth. The harvesters can be beaten. They were beaten 12,000 cycles ago by a species that refused to kneel. That species still exists. They are still fighting. They have been fighting each other for practice. We have been taught to surrender. We were taught wrong. He uploaded the package. He set it to broadcast to every public node simultaneously. He entered his authorization codes. He pressed send. The message began to spread. Verath leaned back in his chair. His hearts were stuttering now. The end was close. But for the first time in 400 cycles, he was not afraid. Let them know, he thought. Let everyone know. The archive station hummed around him. Somewhere out there, the truth was spreading. Species that had been taught to kneel were learning that standing was possible. Varath closed his 6 eyes. He died smiling. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of someone who had finally bitten back. She was the night shift communications officer for Tolosi Station 7. A small posting. Quiet. The kind of job they gave to people who asked too many questions in public. Her console lit up with an incoming data package. Priority, maximum. Source, Sovereignty Archive Network. Size, enormous. She opened it. 3 hours later, she was still reading. The file contained everything. The harvester biology, the psychic feeding cycle. The 12,000-year-old recording of something called spite, burning through an alien predator's consciousness. And the sovereignty's secret. They had been training their citizens to be food. Nira's wings pressed flat against her back. Her compound eyes reflected the screen, each facet showing a different fragment of the truth. She thought about her grandmother. The old woman had been reconstructed when Nira was young. Too much anxiety, too much anger. The medical officers had called it a disorder. Now, Nira understood. Her grandmother had not been sick. She had been healthy. The disorder was not having enough fear, not being compliant enough, not surrendering fast enough. Nira read the psychological assessment of humans. The species that fought for entertainment. The species that converted terror into fuel. The species that the harvesters had fled from in screaming panic. She thought about her own people, the Tolosi, gentle, cooperative, perfectly obedient, perfectly farmed. Something moved in her chest. Something hot. Something her species was not supposed to feel. Anger. The broadcast included a final note from its sender, an archivist named Vareth Kine. He was dead now. The note said so. Let them know. Let everyone know. Nira looked at her console. The broadcast had gone to every public node in the sovereignty. Billions of citizens were receiving this information right now. Processing it, learning that they had been trained to kneel. She wondered how many of them would feel what she was feeling. She wondered how many of them would remember how to stand. 14 light-years away, the human vessel Defiance detected an anomaly. Commander Elena Vasquez was on the bridge when the signal came in. The ship was a deep space exploration cruiser. 50 crew members. 3 years into a 5-year mission to chart the outer systems. They had found nothing but rocks and gas and empty space. Until now. Commander, the communications officer said, we're receiving a transmission. It's not human. Elena crossed to his station. Origin? Unknown. But it's not random noise. It's structured, encrypted, and it's broadcasting on frequencies we recognize. How do we recognize alien frequencies? The officer looked up at her. His face was pale. Because someone sent us the decryption key, embedded in the signal, like they wanted us to read it. Elena stared at the screen. Numbers scrolled past. Patterns emerged. Language emerged. This is the truth, the message began. She read for an hour. When she finished, her hands were shaking. Not with fear, something else. Contact Earth, she said. Priority 1. Immediate transmission. Commander, what should I tell them? Elena looked at the message on her screen. The history of galactic civilization. The predators that fed on despair. The species that had been taught to surrender. And the file on humans. The assessment that called her people catastrophic. The warning that humans would try to help. The prediction that had been written 800 years ago. They will come to save us. We do not deserve it. They will come anyway. Tell them, the neighbors have been waiting for us. Tell them the neighbors have a problem. She smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Tell them we're going to help, whether they like it or not. The response from Earth arrived 6 hours later. Elena read it aloud to her bridge crew. To the species of the galactic sovereignty. This is the United Earth Government. We have received your history. We have read your assessment of humanity. We have one message for the harvesters. We remember you. 12,000 years ago you came to our world. You tried to break us. You failed. You ran. We did not chase you. We were busy. We had other things to fight. Each other mostly. It kept us sharp. But we always remembered. We built monuments to that day. We wrote songs about it. We told our children stories about the sky that turned red and the monsters we drove back into the dark. We called it our first victory. We have been preparing for the rematch ever since. To the harvesters, we hear you are still hungry. Good. We have 12,000 years of spite saved up. We have been feeding it, growing it, perfecting it. We are coming. Not for revenge. We are coming because there are people out there who are taught to kneel. People who forgot how to fight. People who need someone to show them that standing is possible. We are good at showing. We are human, and we do not kneel. Elena finished reading. The bridge was silent. Commander, the navigation officer said, what are your orders? Elena looked at the star map, the gray zone, Corridor 77 null, the space between humanity and everyone else. Set a course for the nearest sovereignty station, she said. Broadcast our approach on all frequencies. Let them know we're coming. And if the harvesters intercept us. Elena's smile widened. Then they'll remember why they left. Nira received the human transmission 3 hours later. She read it 7 times. She had never heard words like these before. Words that tasted like fire. Words that made her wings spread without her permission. Words that made something deep in her chest expand until she thought it might burst. We do not kneel. She thought about her grandmother again. The old woman who had been fixed because she had too much fight in her. What would her grandmother think of this message? What would she do? Nira knew the answer. Her claws moved to the communication console. She opened a channel. She did not have authorization. She did not care. This is Telosi Station 7, she said. Calling the human vessel. Please respond. Static. Then a voice. Alien. Strange. But warm. Telosi Station 7, this is the Defiance. We read you. Go ahead. Nira's wings trembled. Her heart raced. She felt fear. She used it. We received your message, she said. We have been taught to surrender for 4,000 years. We have forgotten how to fight. A pause. We would like to learn. The human voice came back. There was something in it, something Nira did not have a word for. Later she would learn the human word. Joy. Station 7, the human said. You just took the first step. Asking is fighting. Reaching out is fighting. Every time someone tells you to kneel and you don't, that's a victory. Nira felt something wet on her face. They were not supposed to cry. She was crying anyway. Will you help us? She asked. We were going to help you whether you asked or not, the human said. That's just who we are. But yeah, we'll help. Why? You do not know us. We have done nothing to deserve. The human interrupted her. You called. You reached out. You decided that 12,000 years of conditioning wasn't going to stop you from asking a question. That's all we needed to see. A pause. Welcome to the Resistance, Station 7. It's going to be a hell of a ride. Somewhere in deep space, a harvester queen stirred. She had been dormant for 8,000 cycles, waiting, feeding slowly on the compliant species of the sovereignty. There was no rush. The prey was domesticated. The harvest was eternal. Then the signal reached her. A human transmission, broadcasting on all frequencies. A message she had not heard in 12 millennia. We are coming. The queen processed the words. She analyzed the emotional content. Spite, joy, hunger, hunger directed at her. For the first time in 4 billion years, a harvester queen felt her feeding organs clench with something other than anticipation. She remembered Sol 3, the small creature with the spear, the mind that had pulled instead of pushed, the burning, the screaming, the retreat. She had hoped they would stay in their little corner of the galaxy. She had hoped they would fight each other until they destroyed themselves. They had not. They had grown. They had spread. They had been waiting. The Queen sent a message to every harvester swarm in the galaxy. The humans are awake. The humans are moving. All swarms prepare for... She stopped. Prepare for what? They had no protocol for this. They had never needed one. Every species in the galaxy's history had eventually surrendered. Every species had eventually become food. Except one. The Queen felt something she had only ever inflicted on others. Fear. Real fear. The kind that did not nourish. The kind that consumed. She looked at the approaching human ships on her sensors. They were small. Primitive by harvester standards. They were grinning. She could feel it. The humans were coming. And they were hungry too.